3 or 5 ways that you normally describe yourself. Bad ways. Because we generally don't describe ourselves like, I'm always joking, like you don't wake up in the morning and like, hi, I'm amazing. You don't do that. You do, Sam? No. No, most of you do not. You're like, I'm beautiful. Okay, maybe you do. That's great. But generally, what do you think and say to yourself in a negative way? Look, the energy just went like that. Because see, that's how potent it is. So just take 3. You got 3? Okay. Now, take a force of nature or something that occurs in nature, a natural event, and like it could be a tornado, it could be a volcano, it could be the ocean. And use 3 qualities that you would use to describe a phenomenon. Okay? So here's the insight. Why is it that we ascribe pejorative labels, meaning negative labels, to ourselves in a way that generally in life, taking nature as an example, you're neutrally responsive to? So if you I'm going to take the example of a volcano. I could say that a volcano is tempestuous or fiery, or it can be cataclysmic or devastating. But I don't really have any attachment to that. It's just fact, it's just what it is. It's just the thing doing its thing. But if I were to use those same qualities to ascribe them to my girlfriend in the heat of a battle or an argument, it is loaded with shut down judgments. Loaded. The same way you judge yourself. And so part of the work always is just changing the paradigm so that my whole thrust of teaching is about opening closed systems. That's it. Human beings operating from left brain mechanics are generally closed systems. And there's so much data and research that bears that out. And one of the women I was lecturing on last week, Ellen Langer, that I blogged about last week, she talks a lot about this. And a lot of it is neurological based. But one of the things I think she said that I didn't say last week that I think is so amazing, and what I want to talk on here for a second is, she says, when you're working from mindlessness, which means left brain dialogue, which means the neurological habituated way of seeing things, which is closed. So you see things not from possibility, but from the way we're conditioned to see things. She says, we are frequently in error, never in doubt. You guys, that's like a Buddhist brain teaser. Let it sift. You are frequently in error, never in doubt. That's mindlessness. So I'll say it in another way. To me, that's a function of the ego. Think about it. You go into an audition, and you do great, but you don't process things correctly. You process it in error, and then you have no doubt about the fact that you sucked, it was terrible, you stuttered, you said all those lines incorrectly, they hated you, you're never going to get the job, why even bother, your career's never going to take off, you're the worst actor in the world. Frequently in error, never in doubt. Meaning you're skewed to see things incorrectly, but you don't doubt seeing things incorrectly. Do you get it? That's a closed system, people. That's a closed system. So the work is just opening the aperture so you see things more neutrally. Becoming more neutrally specific in labeling things. So I think it's interesting that we see things in nature in various ways, but we get stuck in a singular perspective. And you know, I gave this lecture last night, and one of the students had an epiphany, and she's like, oh my God, it's so interesting. Because she said, the way I describe one friend, when I'm upset with that friend, I would never use that way of seeing another person or another friend. You see? You guys, that gives you no access. And mostly it's about, to me, it creates a closed system where then you can't exercise the most important quality of being human, which is compassion and empathy. Because if you have no compassion for self, how can you have compassion for others? And it has to start with self. But when you beat yourself up from a paradigm of seeing things incorrectly, in error, you have no access to that. It shuts out empathy. You have to think, kind of what I was telling Sean a few weeks ago, you must start thinking about yourself in softer terms. Softer thoughts. That's actually being neutral. it's not a big deal that you go to the ocean and you want to go surfing and it's doing its thing and it's quite violent that day and the waves are, well, I guess surfers would want to go on that when it's like that. I would not. I would be like, no. But I would just be like, okay, I think the water is a little too rough for me to get into. Not that big of a hairy deal. But that's not the same application for you with yourself and other people and the business. I'm going to end with that. Myself included. The challenge is look at the restrictions in dialogue and the paradigms we have about the business. It's tricky. I get it, because in many ways the business itself seems to be a closed system, because you're constantly putting yourself out there and you're getting rejected. So eventually that's going to get stacked in your head, meaning it's not possible. So again, I think it's just about how do we just change the paradigm just a little bit. And what I'm always saying jokingly is, my best friend, he left for Europe yesterday. Thankfully, I got him on the phone before he left, and I was like, okay, you just need to tell me a couple things because I'm in a closed system right now. I'm having a closed system day. Tell me a couple things about myself that make me see myself in, not in error, but in truth. And so he did. And the interesting thing is that's great. We all should have a friend who can see us clearly when we don't see ourselves. You're beautiful. You're powerful. You're magnificent. You're amazing. You're super talented. You can do anything. Oh my gosh, if I were not gay, I would marry you. I want to be you when I grow up. Oh my gosh, your style is amazing, etc., etc. See, that's what a good friend is for. Oh yes, you're right. But you can't really call your friend every day because it's really an inside job. So that's what I'll end with. You guys, all these things, scientifically, you can change yourself. It just takes practice. Sometimes you're going to slide down the hill and you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't. And you just try to do a little bit of a shift. Just a switch, just a little bit of a shift. Try to think neutrally. Try to think neutrally. Next time you're upset with your parent or your sibling or your lover or your teacher or your agent or your manager or the business or your girlfriend, and you want to ascribe that situation or that person from a judgmental place, what if you try to become more neutral? Just more neutral. They're just doing their thing. They're just doing their thing. Just like you are.
No silver or no gold could dress